Hi, everybody. Welcome to English Digest. I'm Tom.
Hi, I'm Stephanie.
Today we're going to continue talking about our featured work of literature, Go Ask Alice. It's the story of a troubled youth or a troubled young person. Again, this book was written way back in 1971. It kind of reflected the times of the 1960s when young people were not really listening too much to what their parents were telling them. There was the generation gap, as they called that. So a lot of kids were trying drugs and alternative lifestyles and stuff like that. They were moving out to San Francisco to be with the hippies or whatever. And they were protesting against the Vietnam War. And they were taking drugs and listening to psychedelic music and going to Grateful Dead concerts. And I could go on and on, but it was a very interesting time in American history.
It sure was. And some of these people who lived or who were teenagers back then are now grandparents. Great-grandparents.
And they're
some of them.
Probably pretty conservative now. Huh?
Yeah. Some of them really changed their lives quite a bit, but they lost about, 5-10 years of their lives messing around, experimenting, as some people say. So we're going to go on today and talk more about the author or... the author of the book, which is what we always do in our literature units on day 2. So we're going to find out who came up with this. It's fiction, but did the author have somebody in mind when the book was written? We're going to find out.
Let's indeed find out now by listening to today's lesson one time. Interestingly, the reader never finds out the name of the diary's author, and it's just assumed that she bears the same name as the book's title. Whether the diary is genuine or not is a subject of dispute. Go Ask Alice was originally introduced as written by Anonymous. Soon after its publication, however, Beatrice Sparks began making appearances as the novel's editor. After years of controversy, most of the evidence eventually indicated that Sparks was the sole creator of Go Ask Alice. Beatrice Sparks worked as a music therapist at the Utah State Mental Hospital, lending some credence to her abilities to write cautionary tales about troubled teens. The format of Go Ask Alice is noteworthy in that it is an epistolary work, or a book constructed of letters. Epistolary novels were quite common in the past, but Go Ask Alice adapted the genre by giving it a more modern spin with diary entries. The format presents Alice as an authentic person, encompassing the real emotions and experiences encountered by teenagers in the 1960s. Indeed, the first-person narrative solidifies the reader's relationship to the writer in part because of the glaring realism presented in its pages. First published in 1971, Go Ask Alice was meant to reflect the struggle to conform to conventional 1950s aspirations. The social revolutions taking place in the 1960s endorsed the nonconformist views of the hippie counterculture, and teens like Alice became caught up in the zeitgeist. Her adoption of hippie fashion and experiments with drugs are reminiscent of the era's rebellion. Go Ask Alice has been banned from a number of school libraries for its explicit descriptions of drugs and sex. Nevertheless, the predicament of adolescence captured in this novel has resonated with generations of teenagers and earned it a tremendous readership.
Okay, guys, let's dive right in here. Unlike most of our literature units, we start out by saying, we're not really sure who wrote this. It's kind of fun. But since the book was first published back in 1971, more study and research has been done, and I think we've come to some sort of conclusion as to who was responsible for putting it together. So let's go to the first paragraph. Interestingly, the reader never finds out the name of the diary's author. Interesting, huh? So we call the girl writing in the diary Alice, but we're really not sure that was the title of the book, so people just assumed that was who was writing in this diary. So it's assumed. If you assume something, you don't have evidence that something's true. You just take it as fact. It's just assumed that she bears the same name. If you bear a name, it means that's your name. So she bears the same name as the book's title.
Indeed, but you could say that Go Ask Alice is a reference to Alice in Wonderland. And of course, that was kind of a really crazy journey that girl took. And, of course, that could be referring to LSD and stuff like that. So, yeah, it doesn't necessarily mean that the woman writing this book, that her name is Alice. Okay, but interestingly, or we never find out the name of the diary's author. It's just assumed. If you assume something, you think something is true, based on past experiences, but you don't really check for sure. A lot of people just assume that I don't know how to use chopsticks because I'm a Westerner. A lot of people just assume that, or I could assume that, well, you're Chinese, so you must be good at math, or you must be good at Gong Fu or something like that. But yes, it just assumes that, that's her name, Alice. Now, whether the diary is genuine or not is a subject of dispute. If something's genuine, that means it's true, like genuine leather. I want to get a leather vest, but I want to make sure it's genuine leather and not fake leather or vinyl.
Ooh, yeah. Well, if something is a subject of dispute, it means people are arguing over it. They're debating it. If you dispute something, you say, I don't agree with that. That's not true. So they're still talking about it. But I think we've kind of come to a conclusion that it's a particular woman. We're going to talk about her in a minute. So Go Ask Alice was originally introduced as written by Anonymous. So when they published this book, there was no author's name on it at all. In addition to not knowing the girl's name, who was supposedly writing in the diary, we didn't know who had produced this work, if it was fiction or what. So if something's anonymous, we don't know the name of the person. A lot of people will give to charities and they won't want their name associated and they'll just say donated by Anonymous. So we'll never know who gave that money.
Yeah, sometimes people win the lottery and they just turn that ticket over to a charity and it's from Anonymous. They don't want anybody to know who gave them that ticket. So yes, if you see the original title of this book or an original copy, it would have said it was written by Anonymous. They didn't know who this person was. And soon after its publication, however, Beatrice Sparks began making appearances as the novel's editor. Publication refers to when some kind of written work is actually available for purchase to the public. A magazine or a book has publication. Publish is the verb here. The book was published in 1971, or its publication took place back in 1971. So after the publication, Beatrice Sparks came out and she made some appearances. Yes, she said, I'm the editor of the book, which means she actually looked at it and maybe made some corrections and then formatted it and then put it in book form. But that does not mean that she wrote the book herself.
Yeah, an editor takes what is already written and makes some grammar changes, maybe suggests that some parts come out and some parts, move or stay into the book or in the article. If you make appearances, I'm thinking, Tom, they're referring to book tours. When you publish a book, the author will go on book tours. They'll show up at different places, especially bookstores, and sign a copy of their book for fans. So she started making appearances because the book was so popular. She said she was the editor. Now, after years of controversy, most of the evidence eventually indicated or pointed to Sparks as being the sole creator, right? So let's look at this word controversy because the book was really controversial. I remember being a little girl and hearing about this book and thinking, oh, it sounds naughty. But I think it was banned in our high school, but not college, of course. Now, controversy is when people have disagreements about a particular topic, and they constantly are talking about it. Usually goes on and on. A controversy. So it was controversial because of what was in it, and also the fact that we didn't know really who wrote it.
Right, and a controversy is very sensitive too, so I can't really think of any local examples to tell you because I might get in trouble because a controversy involves different people having different opinions on a certain subject. And the adjective, of course, controversial. Oh, you can't talk about that. It's controversial.
Yeah, like religion is often controversial.
Indeed, or politics especially.
So, is always controversial.
Avoid political discussions with taxi drivers.
Yeah.
Or you might find yourself getting kicked out of the car in the middle of traffic. But in any case here, yes, most of the evidence indicated that Sparks was the actual creator of Go Ask Alice. She is the person who actually wrote it, although I don't know if she actually admitted to it, and I don't know if this woman is still alive or not, so we still really don't know for sure if this is nonfiction or fiction.
If you see that word soul coming in front of a noun, just means the only. So she's the only creator. She was the only person involved. Who is Beatrice Sparks? Well, she worked as a music therapist at the Utah State Mental Hospital. People who have mental problems with, there are lots of types of mental problems. Sometimes, music therapy can really calm them down, help them improve. Music therapists usually play songs. Maybe they have a guitar and they go from room to room and they'll help some of the patients that are staying at that particular hospital. So because she was a music therapist at a mental hospital, it kind of helped lend credence to her abilities to write cautionary tales about troubled teens. Lend means to give here because you're giving credence to her. If you're giving credence to somebody, you're saying, hey, yeah, I believe that could be possible. So you're accepting something as true. Or you're accepting that there's a likelihood of something being true. It's plausible. It's possible. Because, she's with all of these mental patients. She's probably hearing about their personal stories. Maybe she is the editor. A cautionary tale is a story that sort of warns you to avoid certain types of behavior or action because you'll regret it in the future. That's what a cautionary tale is.
That's what it is, all right. And right now we're going to take a little bit of a rest and let our Chinese teacher talk to you now. Please listen carefully.
大家好，我是 Alice， 欢迎收听 English Digest。今天我们要来介绍 Unit 15第2天的文学单元Go Ask Alice, a Troubled Youth. 去问爱丽丝，脆弱不安的年轻灵魂。首先，课文第一段描述了关于这本书的作者之谜。刚开始发行的时候，作者是匿名。不久后 ，Beatrice Sparks 以这本书的编辑出面。后来有很多证据都指出 Sparks 就是作者。本段的最后一句Beatrice Sparks worked as a music therapist at the Utah State Mental Hospital, lending some credence to her ability to write cautionary tales about troubled teens. 碧翠丝·史帕克斯在犹他州立精神病院担任音乐心理治疗师一职。他写关于焦虑青少年的警示故事，而这份工作为他写这种故事的能力增添可信度。这边我们要来看的是关系代名词省略的文法。课文的 lending some credence blah 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 是分词片语，它是由关系代名词省略而来。还原后的句子应该是 Beatrice Sparks worked as a music therapist at the Utah State Mental Hospital, which lent some credence to her abilities to write cautionary tales about troubled teens.引导形容词子句的关系代名词可以作为主格、受格或是所有格，在本句中是当作主格用，指的是前面所说的 Sparks 在医院当音乐治疗师这件事。关系代名词当主格的时候，如果要省略关代，后面接的动词就必须做变化。动词如果是主动语态，就变成现在分词 VING。例如课文中因为 lend 是主动，所以就要改成 VING lending。如果关代后面接的动词是进行式，关代省略后，后面的 be 动词也要跟着一起省略，只留下 VING。例如 Guests who are staying at this hotel will receive free breakfast。 who 省略后变成 Guests staying at this hotel will receive free breakfast， 意思是待在这家饭店的客人将会得到免费的早餐。而如果关带后面接的是被动语态，那么后面的 be 动词也要一起省略，只留下过去分词 VPP。例如 The cake which was baked this morning has already been eaten， which 省略后就变成The cake baked this morning has already been eaten. 今天早上烘烤的蛋糕已经被吃掉了。
We're going to take a quick break. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Okay, let's continue talking about Go Ask Alice. Remember, this is kind of a diary written by somebody whom we think is called Alice, but we're not sure. And we originally thought, or at least people originally thought, that this book about a troubled youth dealing with drugs and stuff like that, it was written in 1971, but we originally thought that it was a work of nonfiction, but later on people started to think, well, maybe Beatrice Sparks actually wrote it herself as a work of fiction. But again, we don't really know for sure. Now, the format of Go Ask Alice is noteworthy in that it is an epistolary work, or a book constructed of letters. That's what that means. Epistolary means something that is based on letters. Dear John, today I went to the office and I was really mad, blah, 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 blah. Hope to hear from you soon. Love, Lisa. Okay, that would be a letter. So if it's a book that is comprised of letters, we call it an epistolary work. It is constructed of letters.
Yeah, now epistolary novels were quite common in the past. Not so much today, but in the past they were. But Go Ask Alice adapted the genre by giving it a more modern spin with diary entries. So it wasn't just a letter. They kind of change the form. If you adapt something, you change it a little bit to fit a different situation. For example, a lot of times novels are adapted to screenplays. So it becomes a screenplay or a script that is needed for a movie instead of a novel. So they changed the genre. The genre is a type. Genre we use to describe types of music, literature, and movies. In particularly, those three things. And notice we say genre because it's French. It gave it a more modern spin. It seemed more modern by making it into a diary entry instead of just a bunch of letters.
Right, so a spin here just means kind of a modern touch, basically making it feel more like a modern book instead of the old epistolary novels of the past. These are diary entries. Each time you write in your diary, it is an entry. Here's my entry for August 14th, for example. Here's what it says. Well, the format presents Alice as an authentic person, encompassing the real emotions and experiences encountered by teenagers in the 1960s. So she is an authentic person. If something is authentic, well, it's genuine. It's real. And when we read about this person, we believe that she is real, or at least we believe that this particular person could have existed during this period of time. In fact, we believe that lots of people probably had similar stories.
Yeah, so she really does sound authentic or real because you're reading about a lot of these real emotions. And if you're a teenager, you can relate to some of them, at least. I can't relate to the drug use and the pregnancy and none of that stuff. I was a good kid. Anyway, let's look here. Indeed, the first-person narrative solidifies the reader's relationship to the writer, in part because of the glaring realism presented in its pages. When you're reading a first-person narrative, you're reading it, someone's not telling the story about someone else. They're telling you about themselves. So the narrative is the story, and first person just means I. So you feel close to them because it feels like someone's actually talking to you, directly to you. If you solidify something, you make it solid, more real, almost like you can touch it. So you feel like you have a relationship to the writer as the reader, because of all the realism. If it's glaring, it's obvious, right? Obvious realism presented in its pages.
Right, so as you read it, you really think it's real, it's real genuine, it's authentic, it's a believable story. Okay, first published in 1971, Go Ask Alice was meant to reflect the struggle to conform to conventional 1950s aspirations. So, yes, again, this book was first published, or a publication occurred, way back in 1971. Well, Go Ask Alice was meant to reflect this particular struggle. If something is meant to do something, that is the intention of the person behind it. That's what they want to do.
That's their motive.
That's their motive. That's their goal. And they wanted this book to reflect this struggle that occurred in the 1960s. A struggle is just some kind of difficult situation that you have to deal with, and you have to do certain things to get through this problem. A struggle to find friends sometimes if you're a new person in town. And conform to means, well, you do like other people do. Conformists are people who basically do like other people do.
They follow the rules.
Right. And then in the 1950s, of course, in America, there was generally a rule in society that you were supposed to go to college, be a good boy, get your hair cut, study hard, get a good job, make money, buy a house, have 2 cars, stuff like that. And those were conventional or traditional aspirations. Of course, your aspiration is basically your hope or your ambition about what you want to do in the future.
Right. So the social revolutions that were taking place in the 1960s endorsed or supported the nonconformist views, the kids who didn't want to follow what everybody else was doing. A revolution is when a society or a country has a complete change. If it's a country, the government is completely changed because perhaps the people aren't happy with the government, so they rise up and they fight the government and they change it. A social revolution is very different. It's just like we don't like what society's giving to us right now or trying to tell us, so we're going to protest and change things, and that's who the hippies were. They were a hippie counterculture. Counter means opposed or opposite to, and these hippies had long hair, they didn't have jobs, they just, smoked pot all the time, took drugs. They didn't go to college. They didn't want to get married. And like we're talking later on, these people are grandparents, great-grandparents now. And they had to work fast to, pick up life after they decided to quit smoking pot and being a hippie.
Right, so they endorsed the nonconformist views of the hippie counterculture. The counterculture, of course, is the culture that's going on in mainstream society that's different. There really hasn't been much of a counterculture since that time. That was very radical. The hippies were saying, no, we're not going to do that. We're going to drop out and we're going to hang out in San Francisco and smoke pot and listen to the Grateful Dead and stuff like that. And teens like Alice became caught up in the zeitgeist. Zeitgeist. Okay, well, to become caught up, or if you're caught up in something, you're involved in this thing and you can't really stop. Okay, so maybe you got caught up in the excitement after the baseball game. Everybody was going nuts, and well, you usually don't go nuts yourself, but you did this time because you kind of got caught up in it.
Yeah, Zeitgeist is a German word. Zeit means time. Geist means spirit. So it's kind of the spirit or mood of a particular era or time period. Kind of a cool word. Her adoption of hippie fashion and experiments with drugs are reminiscent or make you remember back to the era's rebellion. If you rebel, that's the verb form, you say, I'm not going to do it. You can't tell me what to do. I'm leaving this place.
Yep, it's kind of like a revolution. And Go Ask Alice has been banned from a number of school libraries because of its explicit descriptions of drugs and sex. If something's banned, that means you can't get to it. The government just removes it. Banning books, for example. Explicit means, well, pretty direct. Stated clearly. They're not hiding anything there. A description, of course, is when you describe something and drugs and sex. Sometimes parents don't want their kids reading about that stuff, especially in their school library. Nevertheless, the predicament of adolescence captured in this novel has resonated with generations of teenagers and earned it a tremendous readership. So So this is a predicament. That's a situation you're in that you can't really get out of. Oh, I'm in an awful predicament now. I don't know what to do.
Yeah. And when you talk about adolescence, you're talking about a period of your teenage years. So this novel was really able to get the attention of generations of teenagers because they could relate to some of the feelings of Alice. And because of that, it earned itself tremendous readership, or a lot of readers. Readership are your readers that are fans of your book. Right now, someone we're always a fan of is our Chinese teacher.
接下来课文第二段说明 Go Ask Alice 这本书是以书信体的方式呈现。这种文体让故事中的主角好像是真实存在的人，他的情绪和经历也反映出西元1960年代青少年的心理。本段最后一句 Indeed, the first-person narrative solidifies the reader's relationship to the writer in part because of the glaring realism presented in its pages. 的确，第一人称的叙述巩固了读者和作者的关系，一部分是因为有很明显的现实主义风格呈现在书页之间。这边提到了一个名词 realism， 写实主义，也有人翻成现实主义。简单来说 realism 在文学范畴内指的是作者客观地描述日常生活中的活动和经历，主要关注社会中下阶层的生活，试图还原社会的真实面貌。课文第三段接着介绍了 Go Ask Alice 的时代背景，其中第二句提到 The social revolutions taking place in the 1960s endorsed the nonconformist views of the hippie counterculture, and teens like Alice became caught up in the zeitgeist. 发生于西元1960年代的种种社会革命，支持了嬉皮反文化、不守成规的观点，而像爱丽丝一样的青少年则受到这样的时代精神所感染。我们来简略地介绍一下嬉皮文化。所谓的嬉皮指的是西方国家在西元1960到1970年代反抗当时政治和习俗的年轻人。嬉皮用流浪式的生活方式来反对当时的民族主义和越南战争，他们也批评西方国家中产阶级的传统价值观，还有政府对公民权益的限制。然而保守派人士将他们自由奔放的生活方式用作贬义词，常指嬉皮是吸毒者。课文最后一段提到 Go Ask Alice 的争议性。第一句Go Ask Alice has been banned from a number of school libraries for its explicit descriptions of drugs and sex. 去问爱丽丝因其对毒品和性爱的详尽描述而遭受一些学校图书馆禁止。我们来看动词 ban 的用法。ban 可以当名词，也可以当动词用。常用的用法有 ban somebody from something or doing something， 意思是禁止某人做某事。例如 Almost every kind of cutting tool is banned from being taken onto airplanes。所有刀具几乎都禁止带上飞机。其他也可以用来表达禁止的动词还有 prohibit P-R-O-H-I-B-I-T。 例如 Students are prohibited from bringing knives to school。 学生们被禁止携带刀子到学校。或是 forbid F-O-R-B-I-D。 例如 My parents forbid me to stay out too late。我的父母禁止我在外面待太晚。以上就是今天的课程，我们下次再见。
Thanks for joining us, guys. On our third day of our literature unit, as we always do, we're going to talk about some of the themes and what the author was trying to convey to us through this novel. For English Digest, I'm Stephanie.
And I'm Tom. Goodbye.
Bye.